Ancient piece of diamonds. Whoa. Trying to find that silver lining. Whoa. And once in a while, I'll go walking in the twilight, counting down to midnight. Close my eyes and wait for her to shine. I'm hiding in the shadows, praying that she'll break free in the dark.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It is Monday, November 14th, 2022, and you are listening to episode 151 of the Can I Say Something podcast. I'm your host and a recluse with a juicy caboose, Damian. Joining me today is...
Derick McDuff.
On today's show, we'll be discussing what we've been watching, including Andor, episodes 9 and 10, award season contenders Tar, Banshees of Inisherin, Armageddon time, and much more. Right into the show at canisaysomething@gmail.com, at Bicycle on Twitter, subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Rate and review it on Apple Podcasts. Tell a friend, family member, or stranger. What's up, man? How we doing?
Doing well. As you know, I just kind of booked it back from the movie theater.
Yes.
So, sorry I was a little late because
No problem.
I was like, oh yeah, we'll go see Tar.
Yeah.
The movie starts at 5:30, and we don't record till like 8 my time. I'll be good. And
Yeah.
and then with the ad roll and Nicole Kidman and everything, I got out 3 hours later, and I got a text from you. Hey, do you want to start an hour early? And I was like, oh.
Yeah, that's a long one. Yeah, you got Nicole Kidman over there being like, what is it? Heartbreak feels good in here or some shit like that, right? What is it?
Heartbreak feels good in a place like this.
Yes. I've yet to see the entire thing. We have Regals over here, and the last few movies I've watched, Banshees of Inisherin, Tar, all of that stuff has been at my local independent theater, so we actually don't have any pre-roll ads. We just do a couple trailers as you do, and then straight into the movie. So that's always nice. Yeah.
Do you still ride the roller coaster at Regal, or did they change their pre-roll?
Yeah.
Was it Danny Trejo for a while?
It
or
was.
Because there's a bunch of it around here, but I stopped going to them once I got my AMC pass. Because why would I?
Right. They were talking about this on Twitter the other day. Somebody reminiscing about Regal pre-movie rolls, ad rolls, and stuff like that, and tractions and stuff like that. And yes, you're correct about the roller coaster beforehand, but also they had a thing called the 20 with Maria Menounos, and she'd be like, "Here, I'm here." Yeah. You've had those too. You've had those two over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are always good. I always enjoy Miss Menounos introducing stuff 20 minutes beforehand, because that, back in the day when we were youngins, when we had time in our hands, we just go there half an hour before the movie starts and chill and hang out with our friends who also had lots of time because they didn't have kids and jobs and all of that rigmarole in their life. So you just go there and hang out half an hour before the movie. So I'd see that every time I watched the movie. But now we're sophisticated adults, and we don't have time for that childish humor anymore. I just go to my local theater, and I have these not great seats. The one at my local theater, the ones like the one I walk to for most of my movies, has recliners. Then they recline pretty far back, and they're all like leather, and they're all squishy, and you can put your drinks, massive drink holders, massive seats, and they actually heat up in the winter. So that's a cool thing. And then at the theaters I've been going to for the Oscar-nominated stuff, for the smaller stuff, those are playing at a locally owned theater, very independent theater, like a co-op theater. So it's these really rinky-dink seats you just sit in, very uncomfortable, very small. You know what I'm talking about, yeah. So very interesting contrast between the two theaters that I've been going to this year.
Yeah, no, I get that, because there's definitely the same thing with my local theater, which I adore, the Frida, but it's not exactly all high tech like the AMC that I go to. There's a few AMCs I go to, but the one I love to go to with the nice heated seats, and it was built in I feel like it was remodeled or built in 2015 or something. It's just so nice, and you get to go there, and and you reserve your seat beforehand, so you don't have to worry about going early, because you're like, yeah, I got my seat. I did it on the app. I'm all good.
Yes. Amazing. Good stuff. So yeah, let's get to what we're watching. I think this might be an episode where we talk about the most things. I've seen so
Yeah.
many things in the past 2 weeks. We're right in the middle of award season time with the movies and a lot of TV shows to talk about. So let's kick it off. We're talking about Andor. Andor's episode 10 aired this week, called One Way Out. Are you all the way caught up?
Yes, I did catch up this week on
Nice.
all of the Andor. I was only on like episode 4, and I just kind of binged it all.
Yeah.
I caught up. I pretty much watched everything on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday I watched the new episode. So yeah, this has been good. This is good stuff.
Yes, it is seemingly universally being praised as some of the best Star Wars ever, really. Some of the best TV on TV right now. What is your overall thoughts on the show overall since you've caught up to it?
This is I completely agree with all of that you were saying, that this is really good Star Wars. I think this is honestly, it feels like the first time Star Wars has really done prestige TV. And I know that
Yeah.
Star Wars with like Obi-Wan and like Boba Fett and all this stuff, they put a lot of money into their shows and their prestige TV in that way. But this feels like actual character-driven, real powerful drama with a really interesting adult plot that feels with real characters that bleed and just cry and just I love it. I think so far the best episodes have been The Eye, which was kind of the end of that first arc where they pull off that heist, and then this last episode, episode 10, where they do the prison break. I've been loving it. I've been loving all the interesting characters. I've been loving to see Andor kind of progress. But I like that it's also, even though it's a a solo show or kind of named after Andor, it is really an ensemble. You do get all these plots that have little to nothing to do with Andor. You've got Mon Mothma and Stellan Skarsgård, and all the people that are looking for them, and you have the little fucking incel guy and what's going on with him and his mom, and he just wants to be a stormtrooper, and all these people who are looking for him. So it's been fucking phenomenal. It's probably been my favorite Star Wars since the 80s, if I'm being honest.
Yes, wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. The incel guy talking about was Cyril Karn. He's having these moments, or he had a moment recently. I think it was either this episode or the one right before it, where he's waiting for Dedra outside of her work, and he's like, "I just want to thank you for saving for promoting me. You've given my life purpose. I love my job now. I love life. I want to live. You've given me an excuse to live."
Yeah.
It's just so uncomfortable because he's just so like infatuated with his job, but then it's like this weird dynamic of like, incel-y and like just obsession, and she's like, "Were you stalking me?" And he's like, "No." And it's like, "Yes, you were. Yes, that is the definition of what stalking is."
You were just waiting outside of your work for hours every day.
Oh, so awful. But yes, like you said, I think you were mentioning the Eye episode had incredible cinematography, some great silhouetted moments of characters, and the ship silhouetted against the backdrop of the stars and the comets flying across the night sky there. That was incredible. I did want to sort of highlight a lot of the writing in this show, especially in this last episode, with a sort of a reveal. And again, spoilers for all of this stuff, but specifically for the spoiler here, where they reveal in the last episode that the rebels did actually have a spy within the Imperial information gathering group, the intelligence gathering group within the Imperial Army, who was working directly under Daedra. I believe his name is Lani Zhang, right? He was this guy that we've seen sort of step up and sort of in one of the meetings, he specifically said, like, we're tracking this ship. Or what did he say? He said Andor didn't have a beard, right? Because they were looking for Andor. And he's like, well, this guy had a beard. And this other guy that you're talking about doesn't have a beard. And he's like, well, guys, clearly he shaved. So he steps up in a meeting and mentions that when Dedra is giving her presentation. So he's it was this thing where it was this very cool red herring, or this very, very interesting, like, distraction, where we're saying, like, this can't be the guy. This person is very clearly, dedicated to his craft. He can't be a spy, right? But then it turns out he actually is. And in the last episode, they have this really great the speech that I'll throw in here. I'm not going to do it justice, so I'll throw in the audio as I'm talking here later on when I edit the show. But I just want to mention Luthen, who's sort of been the rallying guy. He recruited Andor at the very beginning, and now he's come back and sort of having this conversation with Lonnie Young about sort of keeping him stable, because Lonnie's he met with Luthen. And he said basically, I have a kid and I'm getting worried. I think they're going to find you eventually. And then obviously Luthen is going to trace back to Lonnie. So he's having this sort of crisis of conscience moment, and he needs some reassurance from Luthen. And Lonnie says to Luthen, what do you sacrifice? And Luthen says,
calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, they set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there was no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything! Just stay with me, Lonnie. I need all the heroes I can get.
Star Wars doesn't deserve this shit. This is fucking Shakespearean shit here, man, right? Holy shit.
Yeah, not only that, but the speech that we haven't even talked about Andy Serkis's character and how fucking great he is, and that arc that he had over those 3 episodes.
Yes.
And his speech where he he kind of echoes Andor's words and just uses that to rally like everyone in this great prison break, and then he has that moment where it's just like he's like he can't swim and just it's so fucking good. And that's a character that I think we're definitely going to see him again at some point. I'm guessing in season 2, because if you don't see somebody die in TV, they're not fucking dead. Like I've seen enough TV shows to know that it's like, oh well, he was probably gone. Like no, unless you see his head explode or him dead on the ground, then he is still alive. And they just ended it so ambiguously that of course he's going to be back at some point. But his character I thought was so interesting. Really, really one of my favorite Star Wars characters, I think, probably since Space Raylan in The Mandalorian.
Yeah, one of the best characters since Snoke, which he also played back in Last Jedi.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I do want to just talk about a little bit of his speech that you mentioned here. I have it pulled up. They're about to break out. They've already broken out a couple of different cells, a couple of different floors, and now they've reached the control center, the control panel, where they were making all the speeches throughout the series, to just telling everybody, get back to work. Nobody can talk. Blah blah blah, all that stuff. So Kino, Andy Serkis' character, has now been tasked to, like you said, rally the troops, and Andor is telling him, you have to be the one to do this. So he gets on the mic and he says, quote, wherever you are right now, get up, stop the work, get out of your cells, take charge, and start climbing. They don't have enough guards and they know it. If we wait until they figure that out, it'll be too late. We will never have a better chance than this, and I would rather die trying to take down they cut the fucking quote here. He said, I would rather die trying to take them down than give them what they want. We know they fried 100 men at level 2. We know that they are making up our sentences as they go along. We know that no one outside here knows what's happening. And now we know that when they say we are being released, we are being transferred to some other prison to go die, and that ends today. There is one way out. Right now, the building is ours. You need to run, climb, kill. You need to help each other. You see someone who's confused, someone who's lost, you get them moving, and you get them moving until we put this place behind us. There are 5,000 of us. If we can fight half as hard as we've been working, we will be at home in no time. One way out. Fucking great. Chills, bro.
Good shit. Good shit.
Some of the best shit, yeah. Love the show. Cannot wait for wait to see how it's going to end. I mean, how do you think it's going to go from here? Like, basically, he has nothing to his name, right? Because at the end of the episode, they just sort of swim to the closest shore, and we see them running, but. You know, they really don't know where he is. Luthen doesn't know where he is. Who else? Bix doesn't know where he is. Vel doesn't really know where he is. All of his allies don't really know where he is. So where do you think this goes in the next episode?
Well, yeah, his allies don't know where he is, and neither do his enemies. So I think that's going to be, now. But it's because he was under this place where he's been hidden under an assumed name already, by the Empire, but the Empire can't even find him. So now it's like that he's out there in the open. And I heard from someone that I think the guy he was running with is somebody from Rogue One. So I think that this will kind of will obviously this whole show is going to lead into Rogue One, but he's going to kind of get recruited to get this. I think him being in this labor prison camp gulag thing where what are they making? Maybe some parts of the Death Star or something like that. This is all going to lead to him just kind of being recruited and becoming radicalized by the rebels, and we're going to see some stuff with that in Saw Gerrera and all that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. They only thing I can think of in terms of where they can sort of begin to know where he is. He was hiding some of his supplies, but right before he was arrested, he was hiding supplies sort of above that shower head where he was living, where he was staying right before he got arrested for like nothing. It was just like, hey, why are you standing around? You're impeding an investigation just by standing here. And it's like, what the fuck? He got 4 years just for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So that's the only thing I think of is whoever he was staying with, they can probably talk to and be like, hey, did he leave anything before he left? That could be
maybe he finds the rebellion at this point,
Yeah.
Or maybe the guy he's running with was like, hey, follow me. And then, they I work for it, and it's like, maybe he is like, all right, I got to go find this guy who hired me, this Stellan Skarsgård guy, who knows?
Could be. Yes. Very, very exciting to see where that will go. So let's move on. Something you just watched, just came out of the theater just now.
Yes.
Yes. We have Tar, probably going to be nominated for many, many awards, not just including Best Actress for Cate Blanchett, probably going to possibly a directing nomination for Todd Field. This is, one of the big Oscar contenders this year. Todd Field's first movie in 16 years. His last movie was Little Children. Have you seen Little Children?
I have not.
So I saw that when it came out, back in 2006, 2007. Really, really great movie. One of the best movies that year. Really quiet, contemplative sort of version of that sort of desperate housewife sort of thing, suburban malaise sort of idea working through there. Very good movie. This is Todd Fields' first movie since then. Stars Cate Blanchett. We have Nomi Marlant from Portrait of a Lady on Fire. We have Nina Haas from
which was bugging me, and I was like, who is this? What do I know her from?
Yes.
I was like, I feel like she was like in a relationship with another woman in something I saw her, and then as soon as she started speaking French, I was like, that's it.
Yeah. Yes, she was in the Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Then we have Nina Haas, who was in some of my favorite movies from the past 10 years. Directed by, let me see, pull up his name real quick. Christian Petzold. She was in Phoenix, his movie Phoenix. She was also in Barbara from 2012. Really great actress. So tell me, give you your overall thoughts of Tar.
It's one of those movies I was like, it's kind of like it goes and goes and goes, and there's a lot of talking, and I feel like I still haven't even fully processed it because it is, obviously really important and interesting is about this kind of flawed figure, and it's this kind of art versus artist thing that it's talking about, and the downfall of powerful people who abuse their powers. And yeah, I mean, it was obviously really good, really powerful, great performance by Kate Blanchett, and great supporting performances. I'm always glad to see Mark Strong show up and stuff. Yeah, it was not what I was expecting at all. I was not expecting it to be this kind of reckoning of like this kind of like Me Too moment.
Yeah.
And yeah, that last shot where she's like, spoiler at the like playing for ends up like relegated to playing for like I guess furries or something like that at some convention.
Yeah.
Like that was like I was like it was one of those movies. Like where does this end? How does this go? And it just
Yeah.
ends, with a whimper, which is I think kind of appropriate for her, and she just is such a fucking horrible person, and it's really interesting, I think, for sure.
So overall, you liked it though, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's one of those movies I'm like even if I didn't love it, it's one movie I can definitely appreciate. Kind of like how we were talking about The Godfather a couple weeks ago, and I was like, man, I didn't enjoy that, but it well made of a movie it is, and how like important everything it's saying is.
Yeah, it was really, really beautiful shot. I thought it was really beautifully shot. One of the best performances I've seen in a very long time from Kate Blanchett. So I have in my notes here, I'm just basically talking about like, the sounds throughout the movie were very interesting because it says like, says so much about the character of Lydia Tarr, where you have these sounds that keep coming into her ears and sort of like breaking her very intricately designed life. If you have like in her apartment, there's chimes in the hallway. There's like a humming in the fridge that she has got to get up out of bed to stop. There's that rattling in the car vents. There's the student when she's having the first argument that gets recorded that basically brings her down. The student is twitching his leg, and I knew she was gonna mention that because it was so obvious. There's so much like quietness and just everybody's stopping and looking at her and nobody's moving. So the only thing moving in that scene is Lydia and also the student's leg. So I knew that had to come into play at some point. Her the assistant conductor was playing with his pen a lot when he was talking to her, and she physically goes in and stops him. So I think that also says a lot about Lydia Tarr as a character, where she feels like she has this privilege to go into somebody's personal space and physically touch them and physically stop what they're doing and physically stop their bodily autonomy. So I think that says a lot about who she is as a person, right?
Yeah. And yeah, like even like something like when she's in her car and you just hear the little rattle of the the car door. It's just she just zeroes in on it.
Yeah, and all of this stuff sort of manifests faster and faster, which it sort of contrasts the breaking down and fractures in her own personal life, which I thought was interesting. Did you catch what the sound was? So there's a part of this movie where she's running in like a park, and you hear a girl screaming in the background. Did you know where that was from? Did you catch where that scream was from?
No, it was like a particular scream.
Yes, it was, and it was a movie I saw like I either saw the day before or I saw the day after. It was from the Blair Witch Project. And you can hear, if you listen at the very end of that scene, you can hear her scream, Mike, Mike, which is the guy that she went from the project with. It's like I watched that movie so much, and I've watched that end scene so many times that I spotted that exact scream where it's like, Mike, Mike! She's like screaming at the top of her pitch and the top of her lungs. I was like, that's for Blair Witch. What the fuck? And then I went home and looked it up on IMDb, and one of the trivia things on there was like the scream in the forest in the park was from Blair Witch. I was like, I knew it. I fucking knew it. So I thought it was very interesting.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm like, or did they just do that as like a cost saving thing, or was it an intentional call out? I guess you can't always send John Travolta out to get some new audio and discover a murder or whatever.
I am fascinated to know why they put that in there, and if the director knew what that sound was, if the sound guy knew what the sound was, if there was some like thematic connection they're trying to make with that about how she's like having these mental breakdowns at that point in the movie. I'd be very interested to know why they picked that specific sound.
Yeah, that's yeah.
It's
I
wild,
mean, I've
right?
never seen Blair Witch, so I would never have
Oh
gotten that in a
wow.
million years.
I didn't. Oh, that's right. You're not a horror guy. I keep forgetting you're not really
I mean,
horror dude.
I mean, horror's fine, you know. It's just
Yeah,
it's
cup
not
of
my
tea.
go-to or anything.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that in the opening scene, her assistant Nomi Merlot is mouthing the words to the speech, which basically tells you again about all about her character, where she clearly either Lydia wrote it herself or her assistant wrote it for her, so she has to have control. Absolute control in all aspects of her life, which I thought was very interesting as well.
Yeah, yeah, no, and then just shows like how obsessed her employee is, and she just kind of takes these young, vulnerable women into her orbit to take advantage of, and yeah, and then when as soon as she sees somebody younger and prettier, this person that she's been grooming for years, she just tosses to the side. It's like, all right,
Yeah.
I've got my new, as they crassly put it, fresh meat or whatever.
Yes, exactly. She brings in a woman named Olga, who is the new not bassist. What do they call that? What was the instrument she was playing?
Muse?
Cellist, I think.
Oh, cellist. Yeah.
Yeah, she was the new cellist, and it was interesting that she had this like completely different. Everything was different about her. Like she was talking about how Lydia asked her what was one of her favorite pieces of music, and she rattles off this person's names, right? There was so much stuff in this movie I didn't recognize. I feel like somebody that's more tuned to the classical musical world is going to get a lot more out of this movie than we probably did, because of all of the references to all this different music, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's so much stuff that I'm just like, oh, I get a couple of things that you're saying. Just being a little bit musically inclined, but yeah, there's so much that I'm just like, I have no, like my dad, who is a musician, would probably gain so much more, or like recognize so much more about what they were talking about, because it's like watching the Queen's Gambit. I'm like, I know about chess, but I don't know what any of these moves mean or any of this stuff is.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting how she's introduced and she's like just eating like like a normal person, and Lydia's just like, oh my god, you're eating like a normal person. Yeah. And then Olga mentioned where she heard the piece that she mentioned the first time, and Lydia's like, oh, you heard it on like a record player, you heard it on a record, like what was your favorite record? And she's like, no, YouTube. It's like, oh, she can see her face physically crash. It's like, oh my god, this person is so uncultured. And
she's so like raw and uncultured, and especially young too. Because she's always, that's the thing. She's always looking for the new, younger, sexier or model. So, and just kind of like trashes. It's like, okay, this person who was born in the '90s. Well, I'm trading them in for somebody who was born in the early aughts. It's just that kind of just system of abuse that that Tar kind of goes through. That, and tosses people aside, that you see happens with the subplot about her protege who killed herself, and how she was just kind of what's the word, blacklisting her.
Yes.
And obviously her assistant is very, very affected by this, but Tar, who is, as her wife puts it, every relationship she has is, except for with her daughter, is transactional. And it's something that obviously happens so much in the real world, and there's been such a reckoning for that in the past few years, that this was a really interesting examination of that.
Yeah, well said. Definitely will be interested to see where this goes come award season. So highly recommend watching that.
And like I said at the beginning, interesting way that they are kind of examining the way people want to separate the art and the artist, and it's like, can you ever really do that, and what is your responsibility to that? And because she kind of gives that speech about, oh yeah, blah blah blah, and then it's early on in that scene that she gives that person, and then in the classroom at Juilliard, and then obviously she deals with a very similar reckoning about how people are not appreciating her as an artist anymore because of her as a person. So all really good food for thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on, let's talk about Banshees of Inisherin, one of the movies I've been looking forward to most this year. The new movie from Martin McDonagh, obviously director of stuff like Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, In Bruges, many other movies. are you a Martin McDonagh fan? Are you a McDonagh head?
I'm a huge fan of his. I actually haven't seen Three Billboards
Yep.
randomly, but I've seen, but all his other movies I'm really a fan of. We actually covered on Underrated Seven Psychopaths,
Oh,
which
nice.
is one of my favorite comedies to come out in the last 10 years. I think it is so fucking brilliant. So I was, like when we did our most anticipated movies of the year, this was near the top. I think it was in the top two or three for me. So I was very excited to see this one.
Yeah, I was too, very much so. It stars Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson, who have worked on multiple different Mark McDonagh pieces. I believe they're also, in a lot of his plays. This also stars Carrie Condon as Colin Farrell's his sister, and Barry Keoghan plays Dominic, sort of the village idiot of this movie. This touched on a lot of the stuff I think about a lot. The last episode we did, we sort of split it up, and I did one with my buddies Andy and Dion, and did one with you. And I'm for the past couple of years, I've been trying with this podcast to get them to sort of think about. I said it on the show, sort of think about the stuff on a more nuanced and interesting level. And I feel like some way they are doing that, in some way they're not. And also I just want to have different conversations. I feel like for the long time that I've known them like 20 years, and I feel like we're sort of retreading a lot of the same conversations we had in high school, that we had, in college, and we sort of are sort of retreading a lot of that stuff. And I want to have different, more interesting conversations with them about the stuff that I'm interested in. And I think that's a lot of the things that Brendan Gleeson is bringing up in this movie, where he's like, we sat me down and we talked about your fucking donkey shit for like 2 hours, the stuff you found in your donkey droppings for like 2 hours the other night, and I want to blow my fucking brains out because you're boring me to death. And he's like, I'm literally going to cut off my fingers if you ever talk to me again. I'm going to cut off one finger. And I guess he didn't believe him, and he ends up doing it. Spoilers for all of this stuff. But yeah, that's the stuff I really, really think about. It's like, I'm not as old as Brendan Gleeson in this movie, but we're not youngins anymore. And I really want to have, like you said, want to leave something other than just a consumer. You want to be more than just a person making things in a shop, in an industrial shop. You want to do things that you're proud of. And he sort of was going to that point as well, where he's like, I want to write songs, I want to play music, I want to have interesting conversations with interesting people. And that's what he's trying to do in this movie. And Colin Farrell's character, Pedrick, she's like, I don't get it. What do you mean? We can talk. I'm interesting. I have ideas. And his sister, Siobhan, is like, no, you're kind of boring. You're actually kind of boring. You're kind of dull. We know it, but you're good. You're good-hearted. And it's that. And I think the movie's overall about, and I'm curious if you sort of got this assessment as well about, like, can you be a nice person and also leave something of substance in the world? He's talking about very much about, Tar as well. Can you be a good person and also produce interesting works of art throughout your life? So I thought that had a lot of stuff that I'm thinking about very often these days. I'm curious if that struck you as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny that you say that, because I don't know if you got a chance to listen to the film cast this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how they were kind of saying the same thing about, like, oh yeah, so I just spend all my days talking to my friends and nothing ever gets accomplished. It's just like what you were saying about you and your buddies, Andy and Dion, and I just thought it was funny because you're obviously relating to the Brendan Gleeson character, but I really love this movie. Like, it's definitely a contender to be my favorite of the year. The more I think about it, like when I first walked out, I was like, I think that was good. I think that was okay. And just as I've been thinking about it, I've liked it more and more and more, because I mean, I think it's with Brendan Gleeson, like he is this character who's like, yeah, I've got to, cut this person off and do all these things. And I think he's so full of shit. Like,
Yeah.
he's like, he has these great aspirations, and he thinks that he needs to do this to be a great person. He needs to kind of be a dick and to, like, not have this, like, friend in his life. But he's never going to be fucking Beethoven, he's never going to be Bach and these things he's talking about, to the point where he mutilates himself knowing that he won't be able to do it.
Yeah.
Just, to be like, I'm like, it's such a makes no sense. Like it's like, okay, I want you to leave me alone so that I can perform this music. The way I'll get you to leave me alone to perform this music is make myself incapable of performing this music. And it's just like it's just such a commentary to me. What it really spoke to was it's about male friendships and how weird and fucking common it is, because male friendships are like tough, like especially, you know, I think today it's something that, you know, gets weird and looked down on, and just you look at the statistics and how, you know, it's a lot easier for women to like bond, and it's much more socially acceptable. And in this, when he's cutting him off, he's literally like he's literally cutting his fingers off, and he's only ever hurting himself. He's not actually, like, by the act of like him getting rid of this friendship, all he's doing is hurting himself. And then, you know, because Colin Farrell's character is a nice guy, and then he doesn't really lose everything until he starts doing something mean, and Barry Keoghan kills himself. I mean, at least that's how I read the scene, is Barry Keoghan kind of killed himself, definitely because of his action. He's like, I thought you were nice, and that's the meanest thing, because it's played for laughs, but you think about it, it's like, that's a fucking horrible thing that he did, where he told the guy about the bread truck and stuff. So yeah, I thought it was so interesting and powerful, and just the way that it ended was so good, and just to me it was really just about how tough male friendships are, and then you have the whole Civil War in the background. It was just the right amount of subtext for like, yeah, this is just this war with these people that are, you know, that are brothers, that are just mean so much to each other, that are just, it's just a civil war. It's not like they were it's not like it's not set against like one of the many wars against England. It's just Ireland fighting themselves. It's these people who mean a lot to each other fighting each other. And I thought that was so fucking great and interesting, and just there's no resolution at the end.
Yeah.
I thought it was a phenomenal film. Mark McDonagh is he makes these movies that are hilarious, but just they affect you so deep. They're really saying something so powerful that if you weren't laughing, you probably would be crying.
Yes, exactly. Just like with Andor, this has some of the best lines all year. Let me see if I can find one. Colm says, "If punching a policeman is a sin, then we may as well pack it up and go home."
Yeah. Also, this movie is super ACAB, which I appreciate.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Like, fuck that cop. That cop fucking sucked.
Yeah, fucking just beating his son and just getting away with it and be like, yeah, of course I am. If you tell me not to beat my son again, I'll fucking beat the shit out of you too. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, well, and then probably hinting at doing, you know, other unfortunate things to his son too. So
yes,
it's fucking, yeah, just like, it's like, yeah, but you know, all cops are bastards. So, you know, like cops domestic, like if you look at it, like I think of like a third of cops domestically abuse their spouses and their children. So it's, you know, it's something that this is a comedy, but it's something it's playing on these awful truths.
Yes, it very, very much is. So highly recommend Banshees of Inisherin. Like you said, it's one of your favorites of the year. Probably end up in the top 5 of mine as well. So let's move on to something we both saw again. See how they run. A little lighter fare than Banshees of Inisherin. Yeah. This is directed by Tom George. Stars Sam Rockwell, Saoirse Ronan, Adrian Brody. Got a large cast here with a murder mystery film, sort of in the same vein as felt very much like a movie that Wes Anderson would make, right?
I was gonna say it's very Wes Anderson light. Like it doesn't feel like overtly Wes Anderson. It's kind of like an early Anderson, like a Royal Tenenbaums or Bottle Rocket, where it's just like a little bit like, oh, there's like these shots of people driving from above, you know. But it doesn't feel like overwhelmed. Like when I saw French Dispatch, like every shot in that movie is like the most Wes Anderson shit we'll ever see. This is just like a twinge, just like a little. Oh, feels a little Wes Anderson.
Yes, very little. This is a movie that I was trying to find what where they're talking about this, but just the state of the industry. It was probably I know what it was on. It was on Bill Simmons' show this week. They did a whole show dedicated to movies with Sean Fennessy and I forget the name of the other guy. But they were just talking about, where it is, where we see movies today. And this is a great example of a it's a good movie. I wouldn't say great, but it's an example of a movie that I think a lot of people would enjoy, but not marketed very well at all. I haven't seen this in commercials anywhere. I didn't see a preview before any movies I saw this year, and they just sort of dropped it on HBO Max, which is going through its own sort of crisis at the moment.
Well, I remember I almost saw it in theaters because I go to a lot of these, since they whenever I go to these kind of like focus features or like A24 movies, it would show up. So I saw a trailer for this a bunch of times, and but yeah, it wasn't playing for very long. I remember I had like a week to see it and then it was gone.
Yeah. Yeah, and their conversation and the conversation around movies and movie theaters and the whole industry in general is very much focused on like, how are movie theaters? What are they going to make? Where are they putting the stuff? And that's where the conversation seems to end. And I think with entertainment and with movies in general, I think we still need to have a conversation about consumers and people that watch these movies. I think we're living in a time where you can just speak into the ether, and a Google Play or whatever, Alexa will just tell you what's good out. Like, just say into the void, fucking tell me what's good. Tell me what has a 90% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Just a little bit of work on the side of the consumer, on the side of the audience, would go so far. Because I heard about this movie, obviously, because, I listen to podcasts, and you do as well. And I'm not saying you have to sit down and listen to a 90-minute podcast every week to know what's out there, but, it's a very simple process of just doing the minimal amount of work to seek out what's good in theaters and what's good on streaming. And I think you can also extend this to politics as well. We just had the midterms recently, where Democrats, thankfully, I think they just announced that they were going to hold the Senate. But it's extended to that too, where information is so readily available at your fingertips. You can just know when the votes are going to happen, when the election's going to happen, and what candidates are for what issues and what they're saying, and all sorts of and things like that. So again, getting back to the entertainment side of it, just a minimal amount of research, just a quick Google search will tell you that this movie is out there and it has a 90% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and it's pretty good and it's worth your time. So I think when the conversation about the entertainment industry overall and where good movies are coming out and why aren't they making movies like this anymore, I think really need to put some of the responsibility on the backs of ourselves. Do you agree?
Yeah, the thing is, though, I think this movie was aggressively mediocre.
Sure.
Like I wanted to see it, but the fact that it didn't have this huge showing at the box office, I'm like, it seems about right,
Yeah.
But I do think that that movies, the way we consume them, is changing so much because we have these short theatrical windows that lead into streaming services, and sometimes things are direct to streaming, and it's weird. We can't really assess success or failure of a movie by their box office, especially when there are these things that are in such limited release and don't play in so many places. So yeah, it's tough to say. And some of that obviously is, like you said, on the people distributing these. This was, I think, a Searchlight. So the formerly Fox Searchlight. So Disney's kind of arm of independent films that they pick up. Yeah. So I mean, it's weird. The whole thing is weird. It's just such a different age, and especially the pandemic really changed a lot of things. I want theaters to survive, but for smaller indie films like this, I that are clearly kind of exist maybe to make a little bit of money and get a little bit of notoriety, but a lot of the reasons that you see all these big name actors in these smaller movies, like something like this or even like Amsterdam, is because they want to work with an actor or a writer or whoever that will get them awards clout. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's just movies like, Bodies, 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 Orphan, First Kill, some horror things from this year. Which I understand people are into horror. That's one thing, but there's also stuff like Not Okay, which I recommended a few weeks ago. There's just these movies that are really, really good that just get dropped on streaming services, which I understand that general audiences, John Sixpack, John America isn't gonna just seek those things out, but they should. And that's kind of my point. It's like these are things that are fairly good and have something to say about our modern world. And I think that was another thing they were talking about today or on the podcast about how movies like in the 70s that were paranoid thrillers that were about the moment. They were about things like the Watergate, and they were about Vietnam, and they were about important issues at the moment. They were saying how they don't really make those anymore. Well, I don't think that's true at all. I think there are movies like Not Okay about celebrity culture and about the internet culture and about social media that are very important, that have messages to say. And I think people should definitely seek those things out before they say, like, well, where are the movies that are about today's issues?
And I think too, like, you mentioned you hadn't seen any trailers for this, and I was like, I've seen a ton of them, and I think that's because, of the, I'm seeing so many of these kinds of movies in theaters, and then, because I am in an area where I can see a lot of these movies in a theater. I don't have to drive however long. I can just drive 10, 15 minutes to my local theater, and they'll play them, even if it is for just like a week or so. And I can, when I've seen the trailer for Tar so many times, and I saw the trailer for this so many times, and like Fire of Love, and I've seen that new She Said trailer a bunch of times. It is all these, when you go see kind of an indie smaller film, they will be playing trailers for more indie smaller films, and this cycle just kind of repeats itself. So it is, once they are very select. They're not going to play a trailer for see how they run before Thor, before Thor: Love and Thunder.
Correct.
So
yes.
it really does say a lot about the targeted advertising and just how people are self-selecting in that kind of way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. Where you are, if you're a person that seeks out smaller independent movies, you're just gonna see previews for other smaller independent movies. True, that is true. I didn't think of that. Speaking of smaller independent movies, and a movie that might be up for Oscar-nominated awards this year, Armageddon Time is the new film by James Gray. I checked out a couple of his movies before I saw this one. I saw The Immigrant from a few years ago, and I also saw Lost City of Z, which I heard was very good. I enjoyed Lost City of Z very much. Not so much Immigrant. I think Jeremy Renner, not a great actor. I think also Joaquin Phoenix is a little overrated in my book. I don't think it was the right role for that movie, for The Immigrant, but I enjoyed Lost City of Z. And I checked out Armageddon Time, which stars Anne Hathaway, Jeremy Strong. We have some newcomers, Banks Rapetta playing their son. Jalen Webb plays the son's friend. Anthony Hopkins plays the grandfather in this. This is another entry into what we're seeing a lot of this year with things like The Fabelmans and also Empire of Light. Many movies coming out this award season about filmmakers' upbringing in their childhood. This one takes place in New York City in the 80s. Just a very small family drama movie about James Gray's life growing up there. Has a lot to do with the criminal justice system and how it's sort of a lot of the scenes in the movie are of Paul, their son, committing crimes, and also basically he has the scene where he's in a bathroom with his friend Johnny, and they're smoking a joint, and of course Johnny gets in more trouble than Paul does, because Paul's mother is a seat on the board, the parent teacher school board there. So of course he gets off with a warning, and of course the black kid gets a lot more trouble, and it's sort of very much commentary about how those things tend to go in our world, unfortunately, back then, and especially now today. So if you're looking for, sweet, quiet, contemplative film drama, I'd recommend watching Armageddon Time.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely on my list of things I need to watch this year.
Yeah. Then speaking of another downtrodden, slow, lugubrious, possibly award contender, Causeway, came out this week. It's a new movie from Leela Neubauer. Stars Jennifer Lawrence, of course, Brian Tyree Henry. Jennifer Lawrence plays a war vet coming back to the U.S. She has some PTSD. I think they alluded to maybe some neurological issues going on with a brain injury. This is sort of her return to form, I guess, in a lot of ways. She took a break for a couple of years after, some not great reviews for her roles, like in, what was it, The Passenger? Was that the name of the movie with her? And
that movie fucking sucked.
Her and one of the Chris's, Chris Pratt, I believe, right?
Pratt, yeah.
Yeah,
that was when people still liked him in the movie, and people hated that movie.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen it, unfortunately.
Fucking terrible. Don't watch it.
Okay. So this is her sort of being like, this is my awards contention thing. This is me being quiet and sad and trying to be that sort of actress. And I don't think she really pulled it off. I don't think the movie pulls it off. I think it's in a lot of ways can see as like a parody of A24 films. This sort of like, quiet character piece, character study. And it wasn't much more than that. I think I gave like a 2 on Letterboxd. I think Brian Tyree Henry was one of the highlights of this film, but not so much J Law. So unfortunately, wouldn't recommend that one. That is streaming on Apple TV Plus if you want to check that out. Let's see what else we got here. Let's get to one of the big ones this week. We got Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. You saw this yesterday, I believe, a couple days ago.
Yeah, I saw this. The night before that, I saw it. So how they do the opening nights are actually like the Thursday night previews. So I saw it Thursday night.
Going into this, I was pretty high on the first one. I think they were talking to us on the Ringerverse about ranking MC movies overall and talking about how this compares to the first Black Panther. They were saying how the first one was massive. It made $1 billion. It was one of those movies that sort of made the movie industry wake up and realize there's this whole contingent of people that are going to come out and pay money for these movies, and they definitely should, because representation very much matters in that way. What was your sort of your impression of the first Black Panther?
I liked the first Black Panther a lot. I think that I wasn't as big on it as some people, but I did really, really enjoy it. I thought obviously Chadwick Boseman gave a great performance. It was saying some interesting things that the Marvel movies have not really said before. About just it kind of tackled some real issues. Being Black in America and just the responsibility that people have, and just Killmonger is such a great, interesting villain. So I mean, it's a film that is also like, it hasn't been around too long, but it has aged very well. And I think that honestly, that movie, if you look at what it was going up against for that year for Best Picture, it got nominated for Best Picture. It should have won, I think, especially since Green Book fucking won. You look at the other nominees that year, and other than maybe one of Spike Lee's films, it was really the only thing saying anything. So I think that it's I just guess I said I didn't like it as much as most people, but maybe I did. I really, really love Black Panther 1.
Yeah, it got me excited for that year, for Infinity War, because we knew he was going to be a big part of that. Definitely introduced M'Baku, introduced Shuri, introduced this whole world of Wakanda. Very, very excited after seeing that movie. And going into this one, I tried to, not hear a lot of the reviews coming out of it, but unfortunately I did hear some middling stuff, which I think put my expectations in the right place. I think going into this, I wasn't expecting a lot, and I think that helped in helping me like this movie a lot more than I would have. I think this movie definitely sags in the middle. I think it suffers from it has like a lot of people were saying, has a Chadwick Boseman shaped hole in this movie. I think a lot of movie revolves around him, his passing, and the character's passing in this movie. I think it opens fairly strong. Opens in a way that you have to hit that stuff head on. You can't. It was unavoidable that this movie was gonna have to be about that, and I think, for the most part, I handled that stuff pretty strongly. I think the beginning of this movie is one of the strongest parts of it, and the ending is one of the strongest parts of it, and very much sags in the middle. I think the introduction of Riri Williams was handled okay. But then also you have to have her introduction, and it has to introduce Namor, which they call Namor, which I think the introduction of his name and the historical reasoning behind his name was really well done. I think that was, for those that don't know, it was basically he was called Namor because it means no love. He has no love for the outside world, for the land world, for the dry world, because of what he saw when he was a child. They basically, spoilers again for this whole movie. He comes out of the ocean after his mother says that she wants to be planted. She wants to be not planted. She wants to be buried where she was born. So he goes back to where she was born, and he finds out that the not Spanish conquistadors, but I think the Spanish come and took over parts of Yucatan, where he was from, and so he kills everyone there. Pretty brutally, and so they name him Child Without Love, Namor. So that's a very, very interesting way to sort of contextualize his naming there. What did you think of Namor in this movie?
I thought he was great. I saw this with my friends, my co-hosts Alan and Ariel, who are both Hispanic. They're both a couple generations removed, or one generation removed in one of the cases, of their parents and grandparents being from Mexico. So it was just like how this movie meant a lot to African American people to see representation. Namor was also, and that whole kind of like Mesoamerican culture underneath the Sea Kingdom was a big deal for them. They were definitely hyped to see that. I thought he was a very interesting character. Obviously that character in the comics and stuff is famously an anti-hero, and I thought they did a really good job of portraying him as such in this film. He definitely had vibes of Killmonger in the first one, where he is this kind of character who is villainous but sympathetic, and you can kind of see his point. And I thought it was really great. I did really enjoy the movie overall. Like you said, I think that the thing it's never going to get over Chadwick not being there. He is Black Panther. He made these movies so great. He has such an incredible screen presence, and Shuri is just not like Shuri is an interesting character, and maybe it's just because we found out in the past year or two that Letitia Wright is kind of problematic. That I really didn't care about her being Black Panther.
Right.
I was so much more interested in almost everyone else, Namor, Baku.
Yes.
Even I forget her name.
Akia?
Yes. So it's just that was the one thing that was missing, because everything around it was a really new, interesting story. It was a superhero story that really didn't have a lot of superhero stuff in it. It was just kind of this epic, interesting world building between these two fictional nations, and seeing how that was going to go and how things were going to play out. And it didn't really lean too heavily on any of the MCU stuff. There's obviously some stuff with Elaine from Seinfeld in there, but
that was awful.
that was not great. But I dealt with all this stuff about like trauma and loss in a really interesting way. But and that was all great. All the surrounding stuff was so amazing. And I think that if you had Chadwick in this movie, obviously it would have been a sort of different plot. That wouldn't have dealt with grief and loss so much. But I think it would have been honestly one of the best MCU movies. And it's without him, it's just fine, And like, given the situation, this is the best I think that it could turn out. I don't really know what you do with the loss of Chadwick Boseman, his tragic, untimely death.
Yeah.
And I think that this was the best way to handle things. I think, while still it felt very respectful to him. They didn't seem. I'm glad they didn't like recast her, anything like that. So yeah, overall, I did really enjoy this movie. But man, you just can't replace Chadwick.
Yeah. Yeah, overall, again, it's talking about the movie. I want to give a shout out to Ruth Carter. I think she won an award for best costuming in 2019 at the Oscars. Still great costuming here. I feel like Namor's costume was really very interesting, where he has all the vibranium armor around him, but not in a way that's sort of in a different way that the Wakandians wear theirs. I thought the introduction of Riri as the person that sort of makes the vibranium detector was an interesting way. I thought that was fairly more organic than people were making it out to be. I thought she also so you had all these characters that basically had to reshuffle and be different parts. Fill the different roles that they did in the first movie. Like you said, Chadwick was the heart of the first one, and Shuri was the comedic relief of that movie. And here, Shuri has to be the heart of it, and she has to be the soul of it, and she has to be the leader of it. And so you have Riri coming in as sort of the comic relief there. M'Baku also has a great moment when we first see him coming into the chamber, eating the carrot, talking to Akeo, calling her a bald-headed demon. I thought that was great. Everyone laughed at that moment.
I didn't have a great theater. Like, they weren't very reactionary, but that was the one moment when everybody just lost their shit.
He was fantastic in this as well.
My favorite character, like, no question. The fucking GOAT.
Yes, absolutely. I felt like the fight scenes were very, very underwhelming, especially the fight scene on the bridge. It felt like nobody was hitting each other. There was no impact. It didn't feel like anybody was actually, being harmed in any way. Going back to the first one, I felt like the fight scene in the casino was one of the best action set pieces in all of the MCU. And here I can't really point to anything that I feel like I'm going to look back on into the MCU Phase 4 and say that's a highlight. That's a highlight of some of the action set pieces of Phase 4. Absolutely not. Do you agree with that?
You're saying in this movie there was nothing that was really a highlight of Phase 4?
In terms of action set pieces.
Yeah. I mean, I think it looked good. I think that there's some, like, the visually, like, people complain about the end of some of the Marvel movies having some not great CGI. I do think that some of the big battle scenes, especially when you see the kind of the Atlanteans or not Atlanteans, but the underwater people kind of ride up on the whales and stuff.
Telecom?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was cool, but I guess there was not really any, like, there wasn't an elevator fight in this movie. There wasn't there wasn't even like I guess it's kind of like emotional at the end where Shuri's fighting Namor, but like it doesn't really hit the same way as, like, at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home or something. Like those visceral fights that were in that movie that were so emotionally charged and character driven. I think you're right about that.
Yeah, so, I give it like a, 3 out of 5, I think 3.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Like I said, the beginning was just hit like a truck. I feel like you watch those moments and you're like, is this acting? Are they actually acting? Or is they just reacting to what's actually happening in their life? I feel like there was a line in there where I believe Shuri, or maybe it was Nakia. It was Nakia, her T'Challa's wife, widow now, saying how, he suffered in silence, and by the time he asked for help, I couldn't help him at all. So I feel like that was definitely hit home pretty closely there with that line.
It was Shuri, I think.
Shuri was said that? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Then let's just talk about the end of the movie, the reveals at the end, where Nakia is talking to Shuri, and Shuri is burning the clothing, and finally having closure on his death. And Nakia comes and sits next to her and introduces her to her niece or her nephew, and she named him T'Challa II. What did you think of that?
I mean, that was a little cutesy. I mean, I did like that. They're like, okay, here's this kid, but it was like, as soon as like her mom like said it, and she's like, "There's something I have to tell you about your brother." Oh, what's this guy over here? Let's never talk about it again until the mid-credit scene. I was like, okay, like it felt like a little bit like a little much to me, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. And then the scene before that, everyone says it's emotionally walloped. I wasn't emotionally walloped by that. I'm not sure why. I think Deanne can attest
That
to this.
scene did hit me a little more.
It did?
That scene, I think that the one where she kind of like finally burns the clothes and kind of says goodbye, because I was like, yeah, because Chadwick is gone in real life, and I think that's
Yeah.
why it affected me a little more.
Yeah, Deanne can attest to this. I went to saw it with him, and again, my theater is just like not. They don't know how to behave. I don't know what's going on in the water around here, but just candy wrapper crinkling, people talking, people leaving, coming back in. Just come on, guys, sit down and shut up. Watch the movie, and yeah, please stop eating so loudly. Right next to
Somebody
me.
fell asleep in our theater, and we could hear them snoring. It's like a quiet, emotional moment, and it was here.
Oh man, somebody fell asleep behind me when I watched Eternals, which was, okay, that's fine. I understand that part.
Yeah.
I can understand that.
I will say this movie, I feel like, did what Eternals tried to do, about be this kind of more serious, like slower movie that kind of this Marvel movie that dealt with some bigger issues. I think that this succeeded where Eternals kind of fell off. One thing I was thinking though watching this is, like, I would love to see a fucking, like, I wish we didn't have to have all the MCU movies come out sequentially, like I love that, like, it would just like do like Star Wars is doing, where it's like, okay, cool, this is set just like a story of a set in the past. I guess we've gotten that twice. Like, we got that early on, we got that in Captain America, which was fucking great. We got to see this cool superhero origin story in the Civil War, and then we got the 90s in Captain Marvel. Do more shit like that, honestly, because we don't like it's, but they're so devoted to telling this overarching story, which I appreciate. But like, do some other weird stuff, do something interesting and weird. Do these, especially now that you have Disney Plus, you can do these one-offs and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing I wanted to mention about this movie, I feel like is a strength of it, was Shuri taking the synthetic heart. What you call it? The herb, the heart herb.
Oh yeah.
She takes it and she goes to the spirit realm, and she sees. We think she's going to see her mother. We think she's maybe see. We're not sure who she's going to see, and then it's revealed that she sees Killmonger, which I thought was a very interesting moment, because I think what they were alluding to was the fact that she has so much hate and despair in her heart after losing T'Challa, that's what the thing sent her to see. And because Killmonger was very much about strength and power and might and all of this stuff, that that's why she saw him, right?
Yeah, that moment was I gasped when that happened. I was like, oh, in the theater. It was so interesting and perfect. It caught me off guard. It was something that you're not expecting it, but when it happens, you're like, that makes so much fucking sense.
Yes, very well shot too, in this sort of like, in this room that's all has water and fire around it. It's really, really well shot. Probably one of the big strengths of the movie. Did you think they were going to kill off Queen Ramonda?
I mean, I felt like they were going to kill off somebody big. I guess I wasn't expecting to be her. I was kind of expecting to be M'Baku, especially when he takes that big hit. I was like, oh, well, that's it for him. They just made him the comic relief to just kill him. Right. They were doing the war thing where you have the strongest person just fight the new strong person to just show how strong the new strong person is.
Yes.
But yeah, I was not expecting her mom, the queen, to die.
Yeah, rough scene there. Overall, I still liked it. They got they, again, talking about the overarching stuff. I know I sound like a broken record here, but with the Everett Ross stuff and the Val stuff, that stuff didn't work. This is exactly what I was mentioning. Whenever I talk about the stingers and the overarching MCU of it all, that's the stuff that should save for the stinger. That's why they have stingers, to put stuff like Ross, reveal Ross and her being married at the end, have her talk to him and say, hey, I'm building this team, even though it's repetitive and it's whatever they've done before, but it's still something that they can then jump to the next thing, or have Riri talk to whoever, Hawkeye, the I forget what her name is, but have her talk to her. There was no second stinger in this film, which I was like, what's up with that? This is the end of phase 4. Really needed something there to sort of springboard into the next thing, because Ant-Man's coming up, so there could have been something there. I know I come on here and I complain about that all the time, but this is really getting ridiculous, because you have, especially in phase 2, 3, all of them had something in there. Before Civil War, you had a lead up to that where you had Bucky Barnes being held by Steve Rogers. You had moments with like Black Panther in there, and leading up to the Black Panther movie, and Black Panther led into Infinity War. You had all these connective tissue leading to the next thing. And I understand it's been all rearranged and all of that stuff, but man, I sat in the theater wait.
Are you saying that they should not have any of that except for the stinger?
Yes, because that's what I'm saying. That I feel like, and I don't know if you agree with this, because
but you just brought up Black Panther. I don't know if you saw Captain America: Civil War.
Yeah,
but he was in the entire movie.
But that worked.
Black Panther was a main character in that movie.
That's an example of how it worked, and I think overall, like in this movie, it didn't work, right? And Black Panther did work.
I agree. Yeah, but like he wasn't saved for the stinger. I actually I don't like that when it's just like, okay, here's all this stuff, and then just this thing comes out of nowhere and it's only addressed in the stinger, I just kind of like that was something I thought they did really clunkily in Eternals, where for example, where Jon Snow goes and grabs the sword and he hears fucking Mahershala Ali's voice out of nowhere, and you're like, what is that? That's just put that in the stinger so they had to springboard to the next thing. I don't like that. I would much rather have them integrate it into the story in a natural way, which they didn't really do a great job of it here, but I still would than just like, oh well, don't movie just for the after credits, because that's gonna get the BuzzFeed and the fucking Looper articles. Is what did that end credit scene mean? And about it all about the fucking movie.
Yeah, well, so this one, I don't like it because they put it in the middle of this movie and it didn't work. Black Panther in Civil War did work because that was, pivotal to that story. T'Challa's father, T'Chaka, was that his name? Right? I think was his name. Died in the UN presentation, right? They tried to make Bucky look like he killed him, so that was pivotal to that story. Val in this was not pivotal to the story at all.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They should do that. They should make something pivotal to the story instead of just sticking it on the post-credit scene.
I think they can do one or the other. If it's not pivotal to the story, then save it for this, because I feel like that's the stinger, right? I feel like is at the end of is past the credits, so that if you're not interested in the rest of the story, right, you can just leave, and then people that are interested in the story can just stay, right? Is that do I have that right, that the stingers are meant to be like that?
I get what you're saying. I mean, I don't know. I feel like just make it a good, interesting part of the story. I mean, I know that's much easier said than done, but I don't want to just stinger that has nothing to do with the film. I don't think that is particularly great either. I mean, you do run into the risk though of an Iron Man 2, which only exists to set up future movies, and who gives a shit about the plot of that movie because it's fucking awful. That's a very hard balance to get. That's why Civil War is one of my favorite Marvel movies. But
mine too.
Maybe just like honestly focus less on that, on just in general, like focus less on the like, well, what does this mean for the future? I didn't think it was terrible. Like it was probably some of the least interesting stuff in the movie. But it was just too long of a movie, and you didn't need it. Right. It's something that it felt like if this was another movie, you would and you didn't need that set up, future plots in the MCU, you would cut it. But I mean, it worked. I will say, in terms of what's her name? Seinfeld, Elaine from Seinfeld being Val. In shit. I felt like this was definitely better than just tacking her on at the end of Hawkeye. Like, I fucking hated that, where she just shows up at the end of Black Widow, where she just shows up at the grave and she's like, make sure you turn into Disney Plus because I'll be there in Hawkeye. I fucking hated that. I would much rather her see her in this kind of clunky little bit trying to work her into the story.
Yeah.
Then here she is. Tune into Disney Plus in 3 months. I can't stand that.
I feel like she was. Oh, no, she wasn't in Black Widow movie. She was in.
No.
What was the show? Falcon and Winter Soldier, right?
Hawkeye.
She Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Oh yeah, she was that.
Yeah,
it was great.
She. So you're correct that she went to the grave of Black Widow at the end of that movie, but then she was also in the middle. She was in the state.
She was actually in the show of, and I thought that was a better use of her too. She was actually in the show recruiting. Because I think you naturally just hear about this like person who's trying to recruit
John Walker,
the U.S. agent.
Yeah,
and you don't know who it is, and then she kind of gets revealed. I can't remember if it was in a post credits, but you had at least heard about her, so at least that post credit scene didn't just come out of nowhere. So I mean, I don't know, just that I do love Marvel and stuff like that, obviously. But that is something that is just like we have to build to the next thing, and the thing that we're watching doesn't matter because there's going to be a new thing. It's become more and more pervasive, and the better you can do it, integrating the ongoing story into the actual story you're telling without it taking away the story. And it's something that's very hard, but it's something that Marvel has done very, very well in the past. And then so that's what I would like to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Me as well. So let's move on to something you watched that I recommended, I think back in earlier this year, documentary called Woodlands, Dark and Days Bewitched. What did you think of this?
I thought this was awesome. And ever since you'd been telling me about it, I know how much you love this thing. I was like, you know what? I've got to watch. I meant to watch it during spooky time. I just had too many other spooky things to watch, but I finally did get around to it. Like I said, I am somewhat of a horror fan, but maybe more of a different kind of eclectic horror fan than your typical slasher fans. So this was right up my alley. I love documentaries about the history of kind of like filmmaking, especially just in something like weird and niche like this, and just diving into this very specific kind of horror film I thought was so fascinating. I love a lot of the kind of more popular folk horror. Midsummer is one of my favorite horror movies from the past decade or so. This delved into so much stuff that you don't even really think about as folk horror, because you think folk horror, you think of like the kind of like the British stuff, but there's the whole folk horror of this country and this thing, and what does all this mean, and long interesting documentary that I had a really good time with.
Yeah, they got into, like you said, the stuff you don't think of as horror, like Deliverance they mentioned in there. You've got, the Japanese horror, obviously, from the 70s in there. They also get into, like, Southern Gothic horror with, like, Eve's Bayou, which I have yet to see. Just so many different ways of sort of contextualizing what folk horror can be. It's one of my favorite genres. They get into La Llorona, the sort of Mexican folk horror that I've seen recently. Just very, very knowledgeable and intelligent people talking about it in very interesting ways. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I really, really dug it. So thank you for the recommendation. I'll get to all these eventually.
Yes, eventually. The ever-growing wish list of stuff you got to see. And you also watched another documentary. Is this a documentary, The People You're Paying to Be in Shorts? Yes,
so this is another documentary. I watched the live premiere of it on YouTube. This is another documentary from John Boyce, who I've talked about at length on this show before. This was a feature-length film that he did a documentary on the worst basketball team of all time, the 2011/2012 Charlotte Bobcats, a team that most people don't remember existed. The Bobcats were even a thing. And they were, of course, owned by Michael Jordan. So it's almost an interesting companion slash, I don't know, almost rebuttal to The Last Dance about there's this great mythical greatest team of ever, the 90s Bulls. Well, guess what? Michael Jordan owned the worst team ever about a decade and a half later, and they were so fucking awful, and it just kind of I love just these weird sports stories that you would not hear from anyone else, and what they tell us about these very real people, and just the way that he has all these. It's all just kind of graphs and charts, and just seeing these things get broken down is so interesting. If you're a nerd at all, you'll definitely enjoy this. Even if you're not a sports person, it's really fun and interesting stuff that I cannot recommend enough.
Nice. And then you said that's on YouTube right now?
Yeah, YouTube over on the SB Nation channel. Just look up the people you're paying to be in shorts, and it'll come right up.
Nice. Awesome. So let's get to our Letterboxd assignment from 2 weeks ago. I shuffled my Letterboxd then, and it came up on To Hacksaw Ridge for me, directed by Mel Gibson from 2016, obviously starring Andrew Garfield, Sam Worthington, and Luke Bracey. This is a story about Desmond Doss, was a conscientious objector, but also signed up for the army. So that was a weird sort of like catch-22 in there, where he's like, I want to join the army, but I can't ever hold a gun, which they eventually made an exception for him to do that because he was objecting on religious grounds. This has some incredible shot military scenes, war scenes, some of the most grotesque scenes of warfare I've seen in a very long time. This won the Oscar that year for sound design. It definitely deserved to win it. Some of the most incredible, explosions and gunfire and debris and body parts flying around I've heard in a very long time. I think one of Andrew Garfield's best performances in this movie, so I would definitely recommend it just for that. Did want to talk about Sam Worthington for a minute, because he, like we mentioned last time when I was assigned this, we were both like, yeah, Sam Worthington, where the fuck did he go? He was in, obviously Avatar in 2009. He was in Terminator Salvation, so he was definitely trying to be that guy. I believe he's coming back for The Way of Water, correct? For his second.
Yeah, he'll be in the second one.
Yeah, The Way of Water, yep. There was a scene in this at the very end, which I don't know if a lot of people pay attention to how movies are made, but a lot of time, if an actor isn't available for a specific shot, they'll do a pickup shot where they'll just film him saying his lines later on, and it might be in a completely different place or time, or different, the lighting might be completely different, and if you look for it, you can tell. And there's a scene in here which kind of a big deal, because it's the very end scene where they're they're back from war, but they haven't gone home yet. They're recovering somewhere. Anyways, Andrew Garfield's character is reading his Bible, and Sam Worthington comes over and have this moment of redemption, forgiveness, and Sam Worthington's supposed to give his big speech here, and it's really nicely framed, two-shot, very nicely lit, and all this stuff. And then it hard cuts to a close-up of Sam Worthington's face, and then it just pulls back, and then you see Andrew Garfield's reaction shot. I'm like, that's badly shot. I'm very curious what happened there. Like, did they not have the audio from that? They didn't have did he not do it while on the day, and they had to go back and reshoot it? Because it was clearly something happened there where Sam either botched it the day of, or somebody didn't get the audio. But it was one of the most egregiously obvious shots of like, ooh, that was not good. somebody fucked up there, which is interesting. But overall, like I said, really worth watching. And I'm glad I finally checked this off my list. I think it didn't win for Best Picture, but it was one of those 1001 movies you got to see before you die. So I'm glad to finally check that off my list.
Yeah, I mean, I fucking hate that movie, but to each their own.
Yes. And your Letterboxd assignment was Lord of War. What'd you think of this?
So how we were saying that there's so much stuff that came out these past couple weeks. So I kind of didn't have time to watch this one. I'm sorry.
Oh no.
I tried to make time. But yeah, there was between catching up with Andor and watching all of these movies. Yeah. I actually kind of was like, before we were recording, I was like, I can either watch Tar or Lord of War, and I went with Tar.
I think you picked the better movie, yeah.
Yeah, I made the right choice, but
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'll talk about it next week.
All right.
I will add. I'll double up on my letterbox.
Yeah.
I'll try not to fall too far behind. I'll catch up to you.
All right, that's fine. Let me go to my watch list, and I'll go shuffle, and we'll see what we get here. Hit shuffle. Bling. Oh boy. Another Oscar contender. Another movie I've been trepidatious about watching because it seems like a typical mid-aughts Oscar bait movie. Can you tell by my clue there what it might be?
Typical Oscar bait movie.
From the middle, from 2004. It was spoofed a lot.
What's the last thing you said?
It has been spoofed. The moment of this movie, a climax of this movie has been spoofed a lot. I think in Scary Movie, it has a Oscar winner in it. Big director. He directs a lot of movies, almost one a year. He's a very old man.
It's a Ridley Scott movie, or
no? Even older. He's like 95 right now, but he's still directing movies. He's big in the Western. He made a lot of Western movies. And
Clint Eastwood. Gran Torino.
Nope, $1 Million Baby.
Oh, okay. Wrong year. That was Gran Torino was way fucking later. Why was I thinking this 2004? Okay.
Yeah, I've been avoiding this movie my whole life, so gotta watch it now. All right.
I mean, it's not on my fucking list, so
yeah. Yep. All right.
So I wasn't have to worry about this problem.
All right. Go to your Letterboxd. Hit a shuffle on there. Let me know what you get.
You're gonna like this. All right.
Okay.
This is a movie that you have suggested to me a number of times. It's a 2020 horror film that you mentioned to me. I'm looking at you gave it 4 stars on Letterboxd. Do you have a guess?
And I see so many horror movies every year. Whoo! 2020 horror movie.
2020.
Is it folk horror? Is it like modern horror?
I don't know. It's
okay. Is it A24?
I think it's horror. It's definitely horror.
Is it A24 horror?
It's what?
Is it from A24?
No, it's let's see here. If it gives me the studio here.
2020 horror.
Nope, no, not A24. It's got Rebecca Hall in it.
Oh, The Night House. Great movie. Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Yep. Highly recommend watching.
I'm gonna watch this before I watch Lord of War. I don't care.
Yeah. Fantastic performance by her in that. Yep. Have fun with that. Yep.
Right,
and then yes, right before we get out of here, let's do some plugs. On my Medium blog, I'm doing bunch of reviews for Banshees of Inisherin. Check that out. Check out my review for Tar. I've written a bunch of stuff for that. I will definitely try to get some words out for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Let's see, what else did I watch that I should write about? All the Oscar stuff's coming out, so I would definitely be writing about that. I'm going to try to see Decision to Leave before our next podcast. I thought there was some other stuff I've been watching that I wanted to write about. I just haven't had time to. Let me see what's on here. Causeway, Armageddon time. I think that's about it. Yeah. So check out my writing on Damian.sherman.medium.com. Go to my Letterboxd, B for Benedetta there. Film Essayist on Twitter. Go to anchor.com to make a podcast. Check out all my interviews with Cinetech and B.R. Yeager. What you got to plug, my friend?
What website did you said your film essayist on what? I didn't recognize that website. I don't think or you said some website. Yes. I don't think it exists anymore.
Oh, YouTube? I thought you were talking about Twitter. Oh, Twitter.
Yeah, I don't think that website exists anymore, man. I don't think that's a real thing.
Did you see that
website is imploded on itself?
Somebody fake tweeted out that insulin was free, and because they did that, the company lost $8 billion. I'm going to be so excited because Elon Musk spent $44 billion on Twitter that he's going to be sued into fucking oblivion. I'm going to be so fucking excited if that actually happens.
The best tweet I saw was let me pull it up because I fucking screenshotted it because it was so goddamn good.
What was it about? Was it Nestle saying we steal your water and sell it back to you?
It's here it is. It
Yes.
boggles my mind that somebody paid $44 billion to become the permanent main character of Twitter. Say what you will, but when William Randolph Hearst owned a newspaper, you could not get away with calling him a little bitch in it. If you wanted to call William Randolph Hearst a little bitch, you had to go to the trouble of making Citizen Kane.
That's incredible. I love that.
I thought that was so fucking good.
It is very good. Yeah, I guess
Anyway,
he really is the William Randolph Hearst of our time.
he really fucking is, and it's like funny. Like my brother is like one of those fucking like guys who loves Elon. I'm like, dude, he was like I got into a fucking fight with him at my mom's birthday like last week. I was just like, dude, what the fuck? This guy sucks so much.
Like, admire the balls on the guy just to do stuff, but like, holy shit, he's so stupid. Like,
comedy is now legal on Twitter.
Yeah, good job being born into an emerald mine empire. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Good job there, man. Whew. Anyways, you're plugging.
Anyway, my plugs. Yeah, my main plug, as always, is Underrated, my podcast that I do with a couple friends. It's a movie podcast where we talk about underrated, underappreciated, under the radar films. Today we got there's a new episode every other week, so whenever this show comes out, Underrated also comes out. This week we are talking about Sucker Punch, a much maligned movie by critics, audiences, everyone. Even Snyder's angry fucking fanboys don't like this movie, but I think it's fucking great. I had a really good time talking about it. It was suggested by my co-host Ariel, so don't worry, it wasn't just me, the fucking one white guy in the podcast saying we should talk about the Zack Snyder movie. It was actually suggested by a woman of color, so I'm glad that we fucking got to talk about it, and had a really good time with it.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, check that out there. And for Can I Say Something? I've been Damian.
And I've been Derick.
Fuck capitalism, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.